Hello and welcome to Smaulgld. In case you missed it, top gold, silver, and crypto stories for the week ended March 18th, 2018. Crypto slammed on Facebook and Twitter ad bans. Andrew McCabe, the former deputy director of the FBI, was fired on the basis of an inspector general's report and FBI disciplinary office recommendation regarding his unauthorized disclosures. Crypto's fall, as we mentioned, on that Facebook and Twitter ban report. And we're going to talk about McCabe's gambit. Is Comey, not Trump, his number one enemy at the moment? Burble dominance increases to 79%. That is the Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple, Bcash, and Litecoin collective. If you take those coins, they constitute nearly 80% now of overall crypto market cap. And it's something that I believe will continue to increase as there is crackdown on regulation. And mostly that will impact the availability or the ability of ICOs to go public and to be listed on exchanges. That I think will put more money towards, or the existing money that is going to be invested in cryptocurrencies towards those top five. It seems to fit in to the normal 80-20 rule. U.S. oil production passes Saudi Arabia. We're going to take a look at some charts. Trump appoints Larry Kudlow as economic advisor. He is anti-gold, it appears, from some of his prior and recent statements. We'll take a look at those. And China is going to ban people with bad social credit from public transportation, but at least they like gold. Let's take a look at the gold and silver action for the week. Well, the gold and silver ratio continued to climb during the week, and it is now still 80-1. It's about 80.44-1. Gold closed down just a few dollars, $6. Silver closed down a little more, about 20 some odd cents. So gold went down 0.6%, silver went down 1.4%, and the gold-silver ratio remains above 80-1. We're not going to talk about the gold-silver ratio today. If you're interested in a fairly thorough analysis of the gold-silver ratio, I have included it in a link on the blog post to this YouTube and this BitChute, and you can check it out here. It says, what the silver pumpers don't understand is the gold-silver ratio may be sustainable. Click there and you can see that YouTube, where I go into detail why the gold-silver ratio is not really out of whack, being at 80-1. Now, let's take a look. Well, by the way, Moronica was launched last week, Smaulgld's Moronica, with a new intro. Of those you didn't see the episode, it's up and it was out last week. I'll give you a teaser of the new introduction produced for Smaulgld by Mark Battaglia.
We got a moron here.
Presenting the distinguished international news commentator and foreign correspondent,
Smaulgld. This has been an extraordinary week in world affairs.
No, I told Hillary Clinton that that's moronic.
Well, thank you for Mark for that. Please check out Moronica for the week ended March 17th. Now, cryptos were battered, and the rationale being that both Facebook and Twitter, and I think even Google ads, have banned advertisements from Facebook and for ads for Bitcoin and Litecoin. This is interesting because Jack, who runs both Twitter and Square, is invested in Lightning Networks, and also Square is promoting Bitcoin. So again, I think it's a nice hit to the entire crypto sector, but these bans are aimed at the ICOs, the white papers, the promotions, all things that are probably securities violations. But Bitcoin itself, Litecoin itself, some of these cryptocurrencies that are not based on promising a return, like Bconnect or some of the others, I think those are relatively safe from the crackdown because they don't require Bitcoin and Litecoin and the cryptocurrencies, Monero, whatever, all those, they don't require advertisements to go up or down. They don't require that type of promotion that you see in Bconnect and some of the other ICOs. So I think the crackdown is going to impact the flow of new ICOs, and also it's raising a lot of awareness that a lot of these ICOs that promise returns that are based on some type of result are going to come under question from investors. Now, the thing about Bitcoin and Litecoin, they don't promise anything. This is where they're like gold. I'm not saying they're like gold in every respect, in that they just are. They're not going to produce anything. They're not going to do anything. There's no one who's promising that they're going to do anything because they just are. They're part of a system. There's a certain number of Bitcoin, a certain number of Litecoin, and either people want them or they don't. But there's no company promoting them as such the way they have in the ICOs. All right, let's get into the analysis of the McCabe firing. Now, last month, over a month ago, I mentioned that dripping evidence of FBI, DOJ, Clinton, Obama collusion will eventually become a tidal wave. So during the week, it was suspected that McCabe was going to get fired. Now, remember, he was the deputy, the deputy, was it deputy general? I don't think it's deputy general. It was the second in command at the FBI. And he had already stepped down and had planned to retire after 20 years of service at the age of 50 about a month or so ago. And one of the speculations, and it was pretty widely circulated, that he was basically asked to step down because of some of the things that they found in the Inspector General's report. I think the FBI Director Wray made that suggestion. So he stepped down. He figured he would just wait his time out. He would not go to work, but eventually he would just retire today, Sunday. And he got fired before that would happen, and therefore he's out his pension. Now, the issue here is just give you some quick background, his role has been suspect because apparently he made some unauthorized disclosures. He also was working on the Clinton email case, and his wife ran for office. I think she ran for Congress or Senate, and she got money from Clinton-related people. So he has been viewed, as many in the Department of Justice and the State Department and the FBI, as being Clinton cronies. And he was going to resign, and he got fired before that. Now, he had also said, beep Trump. First we beep Flint, and then we beep Trump. So he clearly had a bias for Clinton and against Trump. So once that's out of the way, we need to look at then what happened. So he gets fired. And the reason he's fired is on the basis of not just the Inspector General's report, but also because the FBI's internal personnel department made a recommendation, which is rare. They never make that recommendation. They've deemed to be pretty much non-active, and they thought what he had done rose to the level of firing. So they're making a big deal of it. Somehow this is vindictive of Trump. Now, it may be. The fact that he wished for it and the fact that Trump was absolutely rude to McCabe. He asked him supposedly, how does it feel when you're to be a loser because your wife lost? Put all that aside. Trump didn't make the decision. Trump wanted the decision. Trump may be vindictive in it. However, there's a narrative out there that somehow Trump caused the firing when that really isn't the case. What was found in the Inspector General's report and in the FBI's own investigation was that he made illegal disclosures and he wasn't forthcoming about them. Now, the Inspector General, apparently, I believe his name is Horowitz, he was appointed by Obama. So this appears to be a nonpartisan decision. And in fact, it would be odd if Sessions didn't fire him based on the recommendation. That just seems to be what the normal course would be. Now, if you look at what happened to Flynn, he lied to the FBI, or apparently they said he did. Now, there's a thing where Strzok said he didn't lie, but put that aside. The point being is that you're following the letter of the law, and that's what they nailed Flynn on. Now, what's interesting is this is how it all plays out now. This is what I want to get into, is the mindset of the individual, because people look at this from the point of view of you're pro-Trump, you're anti-Trump, you're for the resistance, you're for draining the swamp. But I think in order to analyze it is you have to look at it from the point of view of the individuals involved, what their interests are. And unless someone is an absolute fanatic, which many people claim to be, until their own personal circumstances are impacted. So if you look at what happened to General Flynn, yes, he may have been a patriot and he may not have done anything wrong, but he pled guilty. Why did he plead guilty? Not necessarily because he had done anything wrong, and maybe he didn't even lie, was because he had basically gone bankrupt trying to defend himself. So at some point, people crack and they just say, okay, well, I can't fight anymore, so he pled guilty. So he's out. Now, McCabe. Here's a guy, 20 years he spent, probably the first 15, he probably was a decent FBI agent. But once he got to the point where he was part of the resistance and he was going to assist Hillary and go against Trump, that's where he became politically motivated and involved. And that became, as I can see happening to anyone, his MO for being a FBI agent, to use his power to get a result. And it appears that's what he did, and it appears to be that's what he was obsessed with, and that's what he wanted to accomplish. Well, he accomplished the part with getting Hillary off, but he didn't accomplish the part of taking down Trump. Or at least, if Trump ever gets taken down, it probably won't be because of McCabe. So McCabe now is in an odd position. McCabe he's out, so he doesn't have a job where he can use his political power and influence to take down Trump, nor does Comey. But here's the difference between Comey and McCabe. Comey left as the director, not as the deputy director. That's what McCabe was, the deputy director of the FBI. Comey left, and he became somewhat of a hero. He left, and he was talking about his meetings with Trump, and he's in a position where he's trying to claim he can help bring down Trump by speaking out, being on Twitter, going on a book tour, and providing evidence to Mueller about his meetings. Now, put that in contrast to our friend McCabe. What happened to McCabe? He got fired, and he's nailed. He doesn't get his pension. He doesn't get the plaudits. He gets jack. Well, Comey gets fired, and he becomes a hero, and he's got this multi-million-dollar book deal. But there's a problem in all that. McCabe realizes this. Now, if you're McCabe, you have to put yourself in his position. You don't have to be him. You don't have to think like him. You just have to be, if you were in that position, and you are now out $1.9 million, and you see your worker colleague is out there, he doesn't have any issues. He's getting $1 million book deal. He got a job teaching ethics. He seems to be this clean guy, and you're the fall guy. And the two of you were both very interested in taking down Trump, very interested in helping Clinton, and Comey's getting rewarded for having done that, and McCabe is getting the shaft. So now if you're McCabe, what do you think you're going to do? Well, the first thing he did is he issued a statement. And let's take a look at what he said. So McCabe comes out and he basically says, look, dudes, everyone's saying I got fired. This is the general investigation. It focused on information that he chose to share with a reporter through my public affairs officer, which meant he was leaking, and legal counselor. As deputy director, that's what he was, I was one of only a few people who had the authority to do that. I don't think they should have the authority to be leaking information, but he did. And he said it was not a secret. It took place over several days, and others, including the director, i.e. James Standing Tall Comey, were aware of the interaction with the reporter. So here is McCabe basically saying, hold on a minute, dudes. Yes, we were all in this together, but it wasn't like I acted. I was the rogue actor. And that plays into the pro-Trump camp. Is like, of course not. Of course you weren't the only actor. We were trying to say that the whole FBI was working against us. And McCabe is basically saying, yeah, we were, and Comey was part of it. Now, go back to a year ago, less than a year ago. Comey is asked by the Senate Judiciary Committee if he ever was the anonymous source in news reports about matters relating to the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation. He says no. The follow-up question is the one that was important. It said, have you ever been an anonymous source or authorized somebody to be an anonymous source? And he said no. And McCabe is saying, you sure did, Jimbo. You sure did authorize what I did. Now I'm getting fired and you're getting millions of dollars and I lost my pension. Now, I don't care how much this guy has anti-Trump running through his veins. He's probably got more pro-McCabe blood running through his veins than his anti-Trump fervor. And if I were him, I would, my priorities, and I think that's probably his priorities, are not, yeah, if he can knock down Trump, that's fine. But if the two priorities collide, whether it's preserve himself or take down Trump, I would think anyone but a moron is going to pick save yourself. So this is going to get nasty because I think McCabe is right now ripe for, they can hang that $1.9 million over his head and say, look, we'll make a deal with you. You tell us what you did, and you admit what you did wrong, if indeed he did anything wrong. But of course they're going to say he did. And there's stuff already on record that he did wrong. They're going to ask him, why did you do it, and who directed you to do it? And I think that's what's going to be a big deal in all of this investigation coming up. And I'm surprised to see, we still see people defending him and blaming Sessions and blaming Trump for the firing when the firing had nothing to do with them. They may be partisan and they may be against McCabe, but McCabe got himself fired. The question is whether Comey should be fired. So let's take a look now at some of the reaction here. So Andrea Mitchell, this is a reporter. Why is she suggesting this? She says, one suggestion from McCabe supporter, if a friendly member of Congress hired him for a week, he could possibly qualify for pension benefits. So basically a sham hire. Hire the guy for 2 weeks so he's not fired, so he's still on the payroll for 2 days. And I would think any congressman who does so should be expelled from Congress for obstructing justice and conspiring to defraud the government. And a couple of congressmen did make the offer. Hey, I can use you. You could write a couple of memos for a couple of days, and I'll have you on the payroll. And they're still trying to say that he was fired for doing his job and serving patriotically. No, he wasn't. He was acting in a very partisan manner, and he got fired. And that was according to the FBI and the Inspector General's report. Now, him being fired may cause people to cheer in a partisan fashion, but he wasn't fired just because he was doing his job and he wanted to obstruct justice, and Trump obstructed justice by firing him. And even Slate was trying to say that basically, what did they say? They said something like, there's no facts indicating why he fired other than he opposed Trump. No, other than the fact that the FBI recommended he be fired. Then we got the, this is actually unprecedented in U.S. history. First of all, you got Trump. It was a wild, he's out there tweeting away, stating his opinions, calling people names. But he's managed to drag down Brennan, the former CIA director, the former FBI director Comey, the former Attorney General Holder into the fray. So Brennan gets all what Trump called sanctimonious. He says, when the full extent of your venality, moral turpitude, and political corruption becomes known, you will take your place as a disgraced demagogue in the dustbin of history. So basically, he's not staying neutral, although it's interesting that Brennan's profile says that he is a, quote, nonpartisan America who's concerned about our collective future. He's very partisan. There's no reason he can't admit that. He should admit that. You may scapegoat Andy McCain, but you will not destroy America. America will triumph over you. Samantha Powers, who unmasked many people illegally, she said, not a good idea to piss off John Brennan. This is echoes of Chuck Schumer. They're basically saying, look, the deep state has 6 ways to sundown to getting back at you. Well, what's interesting is these people are no longer in government. John Brennan is no longer the CIA director. Comey is no longer the FBI director. McCabe is out. So unless they have some shadow government and they still maintain all the surveillance equipment and access to it and, you know, have hitmen, it just sounds bizarre that they're acting like they can issue these threats. Well, maybe they can. Maybe they still have people on the inside. Comey says, Mr. President, the American people will hear my story very soon. Yeah, from his multi-million-dollar book deal that McCabe must be fuming over. And they can judge for themselves who is honorable and who is not. Eric Holder analyzed McCabe firing on 2 levels, the substance and the timing. Well, the substance didn't come from Trump. The substance, as we mentioned, came from the Inspector General report and came from the FBI's own recommendation. And the timing, well, the timing was important. The guy had already stepped down. He really should have been fired then, but he also retired with the stated intention of collecting his pension. So obviously, if you're going to act, you have to act before that. Then it says appears cruel in a cave that compromised DOJ independence to please an increasingly erratic president who should have played no role here. This is dangerous. The only role Trump played was cheerleader. But I would think, and basically, he's not been able to get Sessions, it seems. It seems that he's not been able to get Sessions to do what he wants. In this case, it's not that Trump told him to fire McCabe. He may want him fired. It's that the FBI's investigation recommended that he be fired. And here's Samantha Power. And once she realized, she says up here, this is Samantha Powers, not a good idea to piss off John Brennan. And then the comments were basically saying, what are you talking about? Whoa, just got home to see such a misinterpretation of an earlier tweet. It's a testament to polarized times. No, it's a testament that you basically said don't mess with John Brennan, that it could be misread as referring to something other than Brennan's indignation. Then why not say, oh, you pissed off John Brennan? So we'll translate, not a good idea to upset John Brennan because he will raise an angry and eloquent voice. Well, you could have said that in the first place, and that was pretty obvious. You don't need to point out that John Brennan made a angry and eloquent tweet about Trump. Everyone saw it. So what are you saying, Miss Powers? And then Donald Trump, what does he say here? Well, now the thing is that McCabe is claiming that he has notes with his meeting with Trump, just like Comey said he had notes with his meeting from Trump. Well, if he did, I'm surprised he's mentioning it now. And also, if he did, I would think that Mueller would have already gotten those notes, or at least asked McCabe, did you ever meet with Trump? And if you did, can I see the notes? Because that's part of his investigation. And here's Trump saying, I spent little time with McCabe. He never took notes when he was with me. I don't believe he made memos except to help his own agenda, probably at a later date. Well, that's probably true, but that's how you don't sit there when you talk to somebody and scribble them down notes. Say, what'd you say? What'd you say? So I don't know what Trump is trying to achieve here by saying that. He says, same with lying James Comey. Can we call them fake memos? Actually, you can't. They're actual memos. They're contemporaneous writings that McCabe may have made and he's entitled to make. But unlike Comey, it appears he didn't leak his memos. And we'll see what happens with what's in those memos. My guess is if there's anything in there that would have harmed Trump, he would have given that stuff up away voluntarily. He would have called up Mueller and said, look, I met with Trump. He told me to drop the investigation, fire everybody. I want this handled. If that had been the case, I'm sure McCabe would have already told Mueller about it. I think what's in the memos is something that helps his own personal case, not something that harms Trump. I think it's something that's going to help McCabe. And as I mentioned, he's the one who's out. He's on the flip side. He's out $2 million. Comey's up $2 or $3 or $4 million. And he's not as marketable on the free market because he was fired for looking like he did something wrong. But the difference is, while Comey was fired, Comey can say, I was fired for standing up to Trump. McCabe can't say that. McCabe was fired because he leaked information. But McCabe is going to say, wait a minute here. Jim Comey leaked information too. Jim Comey told me to leak information. So not only did I get fired for Comey telling me to leak information, but Comey himself leaked information, and somehow he's a hero. So I think there's some interesting rivalry there. I don't know that. Just looking at the facts, I think I can't see how McCabe can just sit around and think, this is great, we're getting Trump, while he's getting screwed. And he is, because unless they all get screwed, and he's the only one who gets screwed, he is the fall guy. And if he's the fall guy, I say, as I say, one of the tweets I made, that is TNT. When a guy's a fall, he's got nothing to lose. He's like a mob guy who's flipped. And if he's the one who's gonna take the fall, unless he's taking the omerta, which I don't think that they make you take the vow of omerta in the FBI, and he's gonna talk. And he got fired for unauthorized disclosures, and he seems to claim that they were authorized by Comey. So he's saying they were authorized. So why are you firing me? Fire Comey for authorizing them. And Comey said he didn't authorize Jack. Well, McCabe says he did. So Comey's up for perjury. Also, Comey should be up for whatever they nailed McCabe for leaking memos, because Comey, it looks like, released 5 memos to a buddy of his to leak them to the FBI, to the New York Times, about his conversations with Trump. So, at a minimum, McCabe is also saying, why don't you go after Comey for releasing his own memos? You fired me for that. You took away my pension. Why is this jackass getting away with everything and going on a book tour? Well, I'm trying to get my pension, and I may be even going to jail. Because it's interesting that the media is focused on how do we get McCabe his pension. He's probably concerned about that, but he's also probably concerned about how does he stay out of jail. So I think McCabe's goal once was to take down Trump, but I think his priorities have probably shifted to be, don't be taken down by those profiting from their successful protection of Clinton and failure to take down Trump. That's Comey. Comey's, in a sense, taking down McCabe. They worked together to let Hillary Clinton off. They worked together to try to get Trump. They got Hillary off, and you would think McCabe is saying to himself, I should be rewarded. I shouldn't be fired. And McCabe running around, and Comey running around like he's some type of hero and leader of the resistance. Well, I'm left to fend for myself, and I'm getting blamed for all the things we did as part of the resistance. So that's where I see McCabe going. He may be not, normal. He may not have the same self-preservation interest that I think 99% of people would have in a circumstance like this. See, a lot of people that are, they're armchair warriors. McCabe is going to help us. McCabe's part of the resistance. Yeah, he was. He's gone now. He's in no position to help you, and he can only help himself. All right, let's move on. By the way, the Petro Yuan, that comes out March 26th. That's the big day when China is going to be open for 2 hours a week to trade yuan-denominated oils futures contract. That's going to be a game changer. That was the one that that was the gold pumper story that started out as the gold-backed yuan. Then it became the gold exchangeable on the Shanghai Gold Exchange. Then it became the Golden Triangle. Oil companies, oil countries will take their yuan and then go out and buy gold. And now it's just China's going to have a gold yuan-denominated oil futures contract, but that's still going to be a big deal. Now, once that becomes not a big deal, then I would suspect in a week or two there'll be another gold pumper story out there, and every alternative financial media channel will be pumping that story. But you could see it. I predicted this. When this story came out, they'd pump that for a while, then they change it, they pump that for a while, then they change it, pump that for a while, and basically that's the life cycle of a gold pump. And we see them in silver too. Now, back to the petrodollar. See, that's the other story that they don't let go. They've been harping on about the end of the petrodollar, game over for the dollar. And yeah, maybe the petrodollar goes away. And the petrodollar, just for those of you who are not au fait with the concept, it is that those arrangements back in the early to mid 70s that were made by Kissinger and Nixon that required Saudi Arabia to price its oil in dollars and to accept only dollars for the oil, and that led to a demand for dollars because they were worried that because the United States reneged on the Bretton Woods agreements of 1944, and which required them to back any dollar redemptions by foreign central banks with gold, since they said they weren't going to do that anymore, there was worry that the rest of the world would say, well, screw you. Why would we bother holding dollars? They're just as good as any other paper, so we're not going to hold dollars, and therefore the United States world reserve currency was going to go away. And so they came up with the petrodollar, the petro backing, and that became the basis for the United States to continue with dollar hegemony and have the dollar accepted. Now, that didn't really work very well because I think it was in 1979, the Carter administration actually issued bonds that were denominated in Swiss francs because the dollar wasn't because it wasn't backed by gold, it wasn't considered as safe as the Swiss franc, which indeed at the time was backed by gold. So in any event, where we are now is, I've been saying the petrodollar is less important for two reasons. Is one, countries today don't hold the only reason countries hold oil, to buy oil, holding dollars is not the only reason countries, central banks, hold dollars. They hold them for a variety of other reasons. The main reason being that they are considered the safest asset and the most liquid in the world. Secondly, if you do need to have a backing to the dollar, Saudi Arabia no longer has that oil dominance. The United States is now a larger oil producer than Saudi Arabia, and also is becoming a larger exporter. So if the United States needs backing for its dollar based on petrol or oil, it has it, and it is eclipsing very quickly the Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia is less important today than it was in the early 70s because they're no longer the dominant oil producer. And two, they're less important because the dollar relies less on oil backing today than it did in the 70s and early 80s. And as we see here, strong demand for 10-year treasury soaks up massive debt supply. So there's still a demand for the U.S. dollar. And Amanda Cooper, I think she works at, she's a reporter at one of the big ones. What is she? Reuters. Okay. So she works at Reuters. And I saw this chart here on Saudi oil production versus exports. And this is like a 2-year chart that she made. And I tweeted her and I said, what about U.S. production? She said, great idea. Let me do that right away. Thank you to Amanda for doing that. And she did the chart here. And you can see United States crude oil output since 2016, it was around 8.5, 9. Here is over 10. So you can see it's ahead of Saudi Arabia, whose production has gone down. Now, Saudi Arabia is trying to curb its production to try to keep the price higher, but you have to remember also Saudi Arabia has been pumping oil for 50, 60, 70, 80 years, and their reserves are going to run low. And the United States has now got all this new shale oil. Just something to consider, because all you hear in alternative financial media channels is end of the petrodollar, and that means game over for the dollar. Well, it's more complicated than that, but you won't hear that on any other channel. That's all they talk about. And the other thing you constantly hear about is how the dollar has so much debt and the United States is doomed for that reason. That's all true. There's no denying the United States has a massive deficit, 21 trillion, massive unfunded liabilities. But what you don't hear is about what the Japanese are doing, what the British are doing, the Swiss are doing, the Europeans are doing, the Chinese are doing. They're also massively in debt, massively printing up tremendous amounts of their currency. This isn't a United States problem. This is a global fiat debt Ponzi scheme. The United States is just part of it. And to only focus on the United States and to somehow think the rest of the world is just going to shut down the United States, that would be true if the rest of the countries are all on a gold standard, some type of prudent monetary policy. They're not. In fact, one could argue the United States, besides the fiscal policies, their monetary policies are better, more sound money than any other central bank on the planet right now, because they are indeed raising rates and making small moves to even lower their balance sheet, whereas the Swiss National Bank is still printing money buying stocks. The Bank of England is doing QE. The Japanese bank has been doing QE and stimulus for decades. China is just on a massive Ponzi scheme. So I think we should look at this in terms of globally, not just the United States. And mentality that somehow it's all against the U.S. leads people to get this gold derangement syndrome, to think somehow Venezuela is going to take down the dollar. They're challenging dollar hegemony because they're going to accept the gold-back yuan, or they're issuing the petro. Few understand this is complete BS, because Venezuela is in no position to take down or challenge dollar hegemony. They got hyperinflation. They got people starving by the hundreds of thousands. It's ridiculous when people start cheering on Venezuela and China is going to challenge dollar hegemony. They're going to challenge anything. They've got their own massive issues. And again, that doesn't mean the United States doesn't have massive issues. But to make it sound like somehow the United States is weak compared to these countries is lunacy. Yeah, so I say bye-bye old petrodollar, hello, new petrodollar backed by U.S. oil. Zero Hedge has finally picked up on this. How will OPEC react to soaring shale production? This was not an issue. I raised this 3 or 4 years ago and saying this was the black swan, when U.S. oil production actually started to approach Saudi Arabia's, that there would be a massive shift in perception. That shift in perception hasn't happened, but the shift in the actuality of the dominance and the coming dominance of U.S. oil production is now a reality. Okay. See, assets that most sovereigns hold are U.S. treasuries. And this is my point. The sovereigns themselves, not just the United States, are indebted in nearly all cases beyond their tax revenues. See, people always say the GDP to debt ratio. I don't care about GDP. You don't pay your debt off in GDP. You pay it off in tax revenues. But in any event, they all have high tax to debt ratios, and debt is a liability and an asset that neither can ever repay nor collect. So all these countries hold on their balance sheets each other's debt, and then they call that an asset. And those assets are only as good as the ability of the counterparty to pay. And people rightly point out, well, the United States is going to pay back all the trillions that it owes, but neither can the other countries. So there are countries who owe trillions or hundreds of billions, whatever they owe, and one of the assets that they owe, which would be what they would pay back with, are U.S. treasuries, which they're never going to get paid back with. So this is a global thing. This isn't a United States issue. Now, the United States is probably to blame for starting it, and they're to blame for China's current position, where China was basically handed the baton in 2009, said, go print the world out of this economic misery and just do what you can. And so China printed more debt instruments in the last 5-7 years than the rest of the world combined. Also, interesting, not only does the world buy the U.S. debt, but they're now buying the massive amounts of stocks. So Swiss National Bank being one example. So the new petrodollar backed by U.S. oil, again, Zero Hedge. U.S. and gas drilling drive U.S. production to 7-year highs. That's not from Zero Hedge. That's just that was one from the government report, that massive amounts of oil and gas drilling. Also, the United States exports large amounts of oil to China now, large amounts of natural gas to China, and China's own oil production is at multi-year lows. Tariffs, not much to say, not much happened during the week on tariffs, but it looks like Trump is going to unveil a massive package of tariffs against China. We'll see where that goes. That was reported earlier in the week. We haven't heard anything since. I did see Laffer, so the guy who invented the Laffer curve, briefly. If you lower taxes, people make more money, they keep more money, you actually get more tax revenues. That's the Laffer curve. Friedman commented that if you actually lower taxes and the government still makes more in tax revenues, then you haven't lowered them enough. But he mentioned my point that tariffs are a bargaining position, not a policy. I'm paraphrasing, but that's my position. That basically Trump isn't instituting tariffs to institute tariffs because he's against free trade. He's instituting tariffs because there isn't free trade, and he's trying to get a bargaining position. Now, on taxes, this is what happened this is why we have our debt. The reason we have this massive debt is basically the politician's compass. This is Smaulgld's politician's compass. If you raise taxes and you cut benefits, you're getting voted out of office. That's a political disaster. If you raise taxes and keep benefits, that's probably a political loser too. If you raise taxes and increase benefits, that's kind of a toss-up. There's some people say, yeah, it's good, I'll pay more taxes, I'll get more benefits. But if you cut taxes and you cut benefits, well, that's a loser too. But if you cut taxes and keep benefits, you're the winner. And if you cut taxes and increase benefits, you win in a landslide. It's just like it goes back to elementary school. You run for class president, you offer free ice cream, you win. So we mentioned Kudlow. He was appointed. Kudlow's made some anti-gold statements. He's a king dollar guy. I mean, that's all you need to know. So obviously gold is against the dollar. So if Kudlow's for the dollar, then he's against gold. He's made some comments in the past that falling gold prices are a good thing because it means the dollar is stronger. He said that was back in 2012-13. He said just the other day I would buy the dollar and sell gold. So he is, and he's talking about here, embracing king dollar as part of the economic strategy. So don't expect the Trump administration now to be looking after gold manipulation. I mean, if government is involved in manipulating gold price down for national security reasons through the Exchange Stabilization Fund, don't expect that to stop. With old Kudlow at the helm of economic policy. China, as we mentioned here, China's January-February crude oil output matches record low. So they're dependent now, not just on Saudi Arabia, but U.S. oil. Game changer, petro yuan. Well, this is just another one of the stories. China to bar people with bad social credit from planes, trains, and automobiles. This is the gold bugs. They really are deranged when they cheer on China. They're not just objectively looking at it. They're cheering it on. Like, China's going to end the dollar hegemony. This is a good thing. Yeah, so now you're going to have to, you want your social credit in order to be able to get on a plane or a train? These people, they would probably accept anything as long as it meant higher gold prices. Gold back yuan. Go China. Yeah, this is the point. End dollar hegemony. Usher in Chinese surveillance state with a centrally planned economy. You know, as long as you have higher gold prices. Now you see the gold bugs taking a shine to Turkey because Turkey's importing more gold. Go live in Turkey. Go live in China and see. And it's not. This isn't just some ignorant statement. It's if you don't have to even go live in China or Turkey. Just read what you. Maybe they're nice places to live. I don't know. But most of these people who are cheering on China and Turkey now have never been there, are not, from what they say, or should not be in favor of the way those countries are run, would not want to live there, but they only see it through the lens of, oh, they're buying gold, so they must be good guys, and they're going to make gold go higher, and the dollar's no good, so if the dollar goes down and gold goes up, China and Turkey are my pals. Here, Venezuela can't even keep these poor. Look at this. The lions are starving in the Venezuelan zoo, but they've got gold. They're accepting the Chinese yuan. They're backing their peso, whatever it is, the bolivar, with gold, so they're great. I mean, it's disgusting when you see people cheering on these countries when just because they have gold. All right, cryptocurrencies. Well, we mentioned big drop down on the basis of the Twitter and Facebook bans. Still a lot going on in the crypto space. There's development for payment system. This is a Shift card where you can pay with your cryptocurrencies. It's interesting. Early in the week, look at this. Bitcoin price nears 10,000 again. Well, now it's at 7,000. So only takes a couple of days to move big time in these cryptocurrencies. They really, really are speculative investments. No two ways about it. Look at this. I start tracking I started like on the 9th, but here's the Burble dominance. Total crypto market cap was 373. It was 76% on March 12th. And now it's like, it's down to like it's under 300,000. It lost another $100 billion, but the dominance is 79%. Remember AC Chain? Cryptocurrency that was going to enslave humanity by digitizing T and issue SDRs sanctioned by the IMF. Well, I looked up the other day where AC Chain is. It's like 1,532 out of 1,579 cryptocurrencies. It's a dud. forget whether it's valuable or not. It never had anything to do with the IMF. It never had anything to do with the SDRs. What a ridiculous story that was, that hundreds of thousands of people on alternative financial media channels trumpeted. It's slave humanity. Some woman waving a chart in front of a camera, and everyone said, "Oh, look at that! Look at that! SDRs, SDRs." Only the IMF issues SDRs. AC Chain can't issue SDRs. And any change in who issues and how much get issued are a result of a vote that requires a 85% of the countries to agree. They're not going to agree to allow AC Chain, some guy running through a pyramid, to issue SDRs, especially when the United States has over 15% of the vote anyway. Unbelievable that people even believe that nonsense, but that is the state of alternative financial media. Hillary goes down twice. We covered this in Veronica. We're not going to cover it here, but please check out This Week in Veronica. Interesting news with Lightning Labs. Very small seed investment, but the people that invested were big. There was Jack Dorsey. It was quite a number of very prominent people investing in the Lightning Network. Some more stories on Litecoin. You can click through those at your leisure. Please go to the Smaulgld site and check them out. Interesting story. This was not a joke. Some plane took off in Russia, and the door flew open, and for miles, they had dropping gold on the runway. They had some silver there. Here are the people in the Lightning Networks that invested. Here you go. So Charlie Lee from Litecoin, Jack Dorsey, CEO of Square and Twitter, a PayPal guy, Tesla and SpaceX investor Bill Lee. You had very prominent people investing in Lightning Networks. I'm not going to go into what Lightning Networks is right now, but you're going to be hearing a lot more about that as the months roll on this year. Very important development for both Bitcoin and Litecoin. Here's an expensive piece of soap made with gold and diamonds. And you can scroll through these stories. Here's a Bit Pumpers. Yeah, Bitcoin chart shows Bitcoin hitting 91,000 by 2020. Here's a Litecoin pump. 3 reasons why Amazon will use Litecoin. So gold, silver, Bitcoin, Litecoin, all pump, 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 pump. It's never going to end. And it's not just the pumping. It's the making up of stories and facts. Cherry picking facts. Just be aware of all that stuff. I mean, I saw another one here. So silver is now going to be used in some type, and I've reported on this, is not new news, but I saw it recently. It's going to be in the new screens, silver and graphene, so they won't break. And of course, this means big demand for silver. No, it doesn't. You have to know how much silver is in these devices in the first place, and how much is going to be put in these screens. Not much. So you have to know your facts. It's not just this generic, oh, more people, more uses for silver, so greater silver demand. Not necessarily. As I mentioned the other day, the amount of silver used in electronics has fallen from 310 million ounces in 2010 down to 233 million ounces in 2016. So you can't just assume more devices, more silver. They come up with ways to make solar panels use less silver, use nanoparticles, or even aluminum. Same with electronics. So you have to know your numbers. And that about does it. There's some found gold, some very interesting stories on Civil War gold in Pennsylvania. You can click through and check those out. I want to thank you very much for listening. And if you would like to help Smaulgld out and donate to Smaulgld, you can do so through the links on the site or below this BitChute and YouTube channel. You can become a Smaulgld patron. I do appreciate that. Or you can donate via PayPal, Litecoin, or Bitcoin. Thank you very much.